Hi everybody, my name is Lauren and welcome to the Omnivorous Bookworm. So today we are going to do the May wrap-up, which wasn't as impressive. So not any of my months are not that impressive. But I only read 14 books this month and I had one DNF, so 14 plus one DNF. So I think it was a little bit of a slumpy month, but I think overall it was good. So please like and subscribe because I'm still a very brand new channel and every single subscriber and every single like is very much appreciated and noticed. So thank you. All right. So like I said, I have 14 books. This month was the Asian Readathon, so a lot of these books I talked about in those videos. So I will mention what video I talked about it in more detail in, and I will link those videos down below if you would like to check out particular books. So for books that I've already talked about, I will just mention it, say what star rating I gave it, and kind of move on. So the way that I rate usually is I will give, so like a 3-star for me is if I feel like the book did what it was supposed to do, and that's it. There was nothing very special about it, nothing like extra enjoyable. It was just fine. And then I go up from there and I will give it more stars. So I rate it within its own genre and what it's trying to do. So I don't like compare them against each other necessarily. And then I'll give a 6-star to a book that is just a really big favorite, like a favorite of the year or favorite forever. And I just do that so that it helps me to give those books a little bit more support in the stars, because I would rather be overly generous with my stars and help a book than to be overly critical and put it down. So, but, you know, that's just me. Alright, so I had one DNF, and that was, I did not finish it, and I stopped at 19%. And that was the Question of Red. Well, I'll get into that later. So I had one DNF. I had 2 books were 3.5 stars. I had, or no. Yeah, 2 books were 3.5 stars. 6 books were 4 stars. 3 books were 4.5 stars. And 3 books were 5 stars. So it was a pretty good month. I didn't have anything under 3.5 except for my DNF, which is doesn't count. But I didn't have any favorites, but everything was pretty good. So I'm happy with that. So this month I read a total of 3,614 pages. So yeah, not very, not very happy with that, but we'll work on it. The average pages per book was 258. The average pages per day was 117, and the average publication date of my books was 37 years old, which makes sense because I've read 2 Anthony Trollops and an Agatha Christie. I've read a lot of older things, so that affects the average a lot. As far as I break it up into the primary genre and then the secondary genre because most books have more than one genre. So this book, I was definitely very omnivorous. I read 2 mysteries, 2 historicals, 2 romances, 2 classics, 2 sci-fi fantasies, 2 middle grades. So I've read from everything this month. I read 1 general fiction and 1 nonfiction. So it was quite a range. And then for the secondary genres, there was 6 literary, 2 classics. Those were, I think, like the classic mysteries. Did I read 2 classic mysteries? I must have. 1 mystery secondary, 2 contemporary, those are the romances. 1 secondary romance, so it would be a plot that has like a secondary romance. World literature not translated, so books that are written outside of the US, Canada, UK, but originally are in English, was 1. And then I read 1 Spanish language book that was translated from Japanese. As far as diverse authors, so authors that are not, Anglo straight was 9 out of my 14, so that's 64%. And then I also track countries where the books take place because I find that interesting, and I like to read books that are set in a variety of countries. And obviously I try to find, you know, if it's set in that country, hopefully the author is from that country or familiar with that country. So 4 of my books were set in England, 3.5 of them were set in the US, 2 of them were set in a fictional place, 1 was set in Japan, 1 was set in Singapore, 1 was set in France, 1 was set in Oman, and half of a book was set in Syria. So obviously you can see the Asian Readathon was very helpful in getting lots of different settings in my books, which is exciting. Okay, this is where I got my books from. I got 2 audiobooks that were not from Kindle Unlimited, 3 ebooks that I purchased, 5 ebooks that I got for free, like that were available for free. For Kindle Unlimited, I had 6 books. 4 of them were just ebook only, and then 2 of them had the audiobook plus the ebook. So that's always nice. I love that. All right, so to get into the actual book. So the first book I DNF'd, I did not finish it, was The Question of Red by Laksmi Pamuntjak, which was set in Indonesia, and it has an Indonesian author. I talk about this in week 1 of my Asian Readathon check-in. And why I didn't finish it, I think the writing was really good. It was just kind of all over the place for where my head was at, as far as like jumping a lot between characters in a very short space of time, as well as jumping in time. And there was a lot of distance between the reader and the characters, and I wasn't getting into it, and I didn't feel like I was going to. And then I read some of the reviews, and I realized I wasn't going to really enjoy this book, probably in the state of mind I was in. So I did a service, and that, I feel like that sort of started my slump this month. So I found myself like, oh, I don't want to read, I don't want to do it, and then it was just sort of dragging, and I don't know, I'm glad I DNF'd it, because I probably wouldn't have given it a good rating anyway. So I don't want to, read something that's not for me at this time and then give it a bad rating. But yeah, I think it kind of, I don't want to blame it on the book. I think it's me. But yeah, the month was sort of, I would like go in spurts and then I would lag, and then kind of go in a spurt and then I would lag. But that's normal and it's fine. Alright, so I have 2 3.5 star books. The first one is The Perilous Life of Jade Yao by Zin Cho. I talk about this book in my Asian Readathon wrap-up. It was a novella about a Malaysian upper-class woman who goes to the UK in 1920s, and about her things that she does with upper middle class, upper rich artsy people at that time. It's a historical. It's not a classic. So the next 3.5 star book I have is Neanderthal Seeks Human. It's a Knitting in the City #1 by Penny Reid. This book was really, it's a romance. It was a little bit, I don't know, when I was reading it, like I would say the first third, I was so happy, and I was thinking, I'm going to give this book a 4.5 or a 5 star, because I really liked the main character. She's kind of quirky, but not in like an over the top way, at least for me. It's a romantic comedy, but it wasn't like a lot of slapstick. It wasn't very corny, which I appreciated. And I really like some of the banter that would go on between the main character, the heroine and the hero. I liked the friends that she has a lot of friends. I like that the heroine is very intelligent. She's good at math. There's lots of, I really enjoyed the writing. I thought the writing was good for a romance. And there was just lots of things that I liked about it. I would definitely check out other books by this author. because I liked how she did a lot of the plotting and stuff. But then it sort of started to fall flat for me in several different ways. So I say that, I say the first part to say, like, that's how good the first part was, because it fell apart in a lot of ways for me. So the first way that it fell apart is that you have this information that is extremely obvious to the reader. And then you have this heroine who's supposed to be very smart but kind of oblivious, and the author, tries to explain why she's oblivious, and you're like, okay, okay, but it just goes on so long, and I just hate that when, like, you're just like, come on, figure it out, come with us. Like, this has gone on long enough. It's okay if it goes on for a little while, but when it gets to a point, it's like, come on. And there was just other things that it was like, I don't know if they were supposed to be mysteries, but they were just really obvious, and I didn't like that as much. The main problem I had was with the hero. Was creepy. He was so creepy and weird and kind of a jerk. Like, and I'm okay with that up to a point, but if you're gonna put these two together and you have this very oblivious, very smart, naive woman with this, like, overbearing guy, it's just a bad match. Like, mm-mm. And he didn't really have enough character growth for me either. So that was another problem that I had with it. And then the other problem, and this one is just little, but it irritates me so much, when you have a character, and it's always a woman, and she's extremely beautiful, and she'll talk, but she constantly talks about how insecure she is about, like this character. She's like, oh, my boobs are so big, but my waist is very small, and my butt is big. But she always, like, makes a point to, like, talk about how small her waist is. I don't know any woman, like, even if she is thin, who thinks that, like, oh yes, I have a small waist. I just I don't believe that. And usually if a woman is really attractive, like, it's okay for her to know that and say, like, oh, I have this good quality. Or if you have an attractive character, have them, like, she's also really tall, if she's going to be insecure about something, at least make it something that makes sense. Like, oh, I'm taller than this person, it makes me uncomfortable. But I don't need her to feel uncomfortable about how she looks. I mean, it's okay in, like, little doses, but over and over and over again, it's like, okay, okay, like, we don't need, I especially don't need a beautiful woman telling me how uncomfortable she is about her appearance. But anyway, that's just a small thing, but I hate that. Like, that's one of my pet peeves in romances. Okay, so now I have my 4-star books. 6 of the 4-star books. The Reason I Jump, by Naoki Higashida. I read the Spanish translation, which was La Razón por la que Salto, and I talk about this in week 1 as well as week 2 of my Asian readathon check-ins, mainly in week 2. And it's about it's a nonfiction book about a 13-year-old who's nonverbal, and he's nonverbal and he has autism, and he answers a bunch of questions. I really enjoyed his writing. I wasn't a fan of a lot of the questions, so I'll leave it. Alright, the next one I have as a number 4 was The Empress of Salt and Fortune, Singing Hills Cycle number 1 by Niveau. I talk about this book in my week 2 check-in in the Asian Readathon that I have linked below. It's a novella, it's fantasy, it's set in a fantasy Imperial China type setting, and it has a main character who is a non-binary cleric named Chi, and they are asking this woman, Rabbit, who worked for the Empress of Salt and Fortune, and she's telling the tale to Chi, and Chi is then recording this tale, so it goes back and forth. Alright, the next one I have as a number 4 is Alice Digdale by Anthony Trollope. This was published in 1878. I really like this, guys. So this was a novella, and if you haven't read Anthony Trollope and you would like to, I think this will be a really great entry point. It's not the best thing that I've ever read by him, But I think that's also good, because if you read the best, and everything else is like goes downhill. But and I haven't read everything by him because he's written so much. But it's nice because it's a novella, and LibriVox, anything that's out of copyright, they do audiobooks for. And this particular one, the audiobook is really well done. So I will link that as well down below in case you want to check it out. But it uses a lot of the tropes that Anthony Trollope loves. The main character Alice, I really enjoyed her. She's kind of I mean, she's the Victorian, woman, but she's got this little bit of an edge to her that I always appreciate in a lot of Anthony Trollope's characters. She also has a positive relationship with her stepmother, which I always love, because, I was raised by my stepmother, and she's a wonderful person, and I always hate when stepmothers get the short end of the stick. So I really like that she has this sweet relationship with her stepmother. She has half siblings that she takes care of, but she really loves them, and she's like just this kind of person who's like always the person that I want to be, that she's always doing things and very industrious and stuff like that. The love story part of it is interesting. I just overall, I mean, it's not, like I said, it's not the most amazing book by Anthony Trollope, but I think it's a really nice entry point, and I really enjoyed it, which is why I gave it 4 stars. And it's a novella, so it's like, I think the LibriVox recording is like 2 hours, or maybe it's 4 hours, and it took me 2 hours. I don't know, because I listened to it at double speed, so I think it's about like 2 hours to listen to. If you listen to it at double, what's 2 to 4 hours? It's not very long, so it's a nice one to get into. The number 4 book for 4 stars is Auntie Lee's Delights, a Singaporean mystery. It's number 1, and it's by Ovidia Yu. I talk about this book in my week 2 check-in. Yes, week 2 check-in for the Asian Readathon. It's set in Singapore. It's a nice cozy mystery. It's harkens very much back. It's like Agatha Christie set in modern day Singapore. Is very similar tropes and everything like that. Has Singaporean cuisine, and it was interesting to see the police in Singapore. A well done book that I enjoyed. All right, number 5, I have the Framley Parsonage, and that's number 4 in the Barsetshire series, also by Anthony Trollope. It was published in 1860. I really like this one, and I was very much relieved because I didn't enjoy the number 3 book, which was Dr. Thorne. I'm going to be doing a whole video. I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to be doing a whole review of Framley Parsonage. I personally liked it more than Dr. Thorne. I think because what Anthony Trollope does really well, in my opinion, is how he talks about money and how money affects people, and class and money, and how that worked in Victorian England, specifically in the church. Like, what is the job of a church person, and how much should they be concerned with money? But they are a person, and they have a family. And especially in England at this time, as the church was very powerful and part of the government, that you had this sort of bureaucracy and the same problems that you often see in sort of government corruption and things is happening in the church as well. And we have this guy who ends up getting into debt, even though he doesn't get the money, and trusting a friend. And he's sort of this nice guy, but kind of overly naive. And we have, I don't know, I really liked, there was no real bad guy in this book, no true antagonist. We do have the lady who's his patron, who she's snobby. She's snobby, but she's not evil. And so I thought that was an interesting contrast. We also get to see a lot of the characters from previous books. We get to see Miss Dunstable, who I enjoy. She's very funny. We get to see Dr. Thorne again. We get to see the Harding sisters. Well, their maiden name would be Harding. And Susan, the older one, Susan's daughter, who's very beautiful and not very smart. And just a lot of Anthony Childs, he just pokes fun at everybody, but in like a sweet way. It's like he loves his characters, but he also knows who they are and can laugh at them, and will oftentimes sort of make snide comments, either have characters make snide comments about other characters, or he will insert himself to make snide comments. And I liked it. I really enjoyed it. I thought that the the main girl in this book, the love interest, was much better than Mary Thorne. I was very much relieved at that. So I will be doing a whole review of this book. But yeah, it was very well. I liked it. And then the last one I have for a 4-star book is The Turtle of Oman by Naomi Shihab Nye, and I talk about this book in my Asian Readathon wrap-up. And yeah, it's about a little boy. It's a middle grade book, and his parents are moving to the U.S. from Oman. It's set in Oman, and he doesn't want to go, and it's sort of about how he's trying to come to terms with going to the U.S. for a few years while his parents get their doctorate degrees. And it's very well written. She really gets into the head of a child, I think, very well. It's not plot heavy at all. It's really not. But it's very character driven, very sweet. I definitely enjoyed it. I liked the little boy. He seemed very realistic. Okay, so now we're into the 4.5-star books. The first one I have is Victoria Cottage. It's the #1 in the Daring family by D.E. Stevenson. It was published in 1949. This is the first book that I have read by her. Honestly, like, based on the plot, this probably shouldn't be a 4.5. Like arbitrarily, I mean, it's nothing's arbitrary, but I can be honest and say, like, it probably doesn't deserve 4.5. But I loved it so much. It was so sweet the way it was written, and I wouldn't have given it a 4.5, but I really liked the ending. And so many books that you read, the ending kind of crashes and burns, and so when a book can really stick the landing on an ending and impress me with it, then she stopped it like right when she should. Instead of, like, if she had continued on a little bit, it would have been too schmaltzy. And so I really enjoyed and appreciated where she ended it. And so I was like, okay, this deserves 4.5. And I just enjoyed the experience. It was very sweet, very cozy. Yeah, so we follow Caroline Daring, who is a widow, and she has 2 adult children. The daughter is horrible. She's very spoiled. Her son comes home from Malaysia, where he was serving in the military, and he's very nice. I like they have a maid who works in their house. They always talk about how overweight she is, and because of the fact that she has some type of thyroid condition. I think for that time, they do it in a pretty understanding way. It's not overly as judgmental, although they do say so. Well, it's different because some of the characters do say some offensive things about weight, but though that is seen as a negative, so it's not like, oh, that's funny, ha ha ha. No, but it is there if that's something you wouldn't like. And I like that the protagonist is older. She ends up with a love interest, which is always nice to see. And she has a sister who is working in the theater in London, and she's very funny, very kind of sarcastic sometimes. I don't know, I love those small towns. It kept reminding me kind of like an Agatha Christie, but since there's no murder, it was a little off-putting sometimes, because when I first started reading it, I was like, oh, maybe they're gonna be the ones, and I'm like, oh wait, nobody's gonna die. So I need to get that out of my head. So it's kind of like the Agatha Christie without a murder, but there's other things that do happen. So if you want to kind of slower pace. No, it's not slow pace, but it's not a lot is happening. Just very sweet, kind of, you know, like a little stream flowing. That's how I picture it. Then it's a great book. So other people will not like it as much as I did. I understand that, but I really liked it, especially for my headspace at that time. The next 4.5-star book I have is Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga. I talk about this book in my Asian Readathon wrap-up. It is a middle grade book it's written in verse about a young girl who moves from Syria to the U.S. And she actually moves to Cincinnati, which is where I'm originally from. I live in Mexico now. But it was kind of funny because Cincinnati is such a small city. We never, anytime anything is in Cincinnati, it's very exciting. It's like, wow, people actually talked about Cincinnati. So, and it's very well done. She gets into the character's head very well. It's very realistic. I always enjoy books that take a really large sort of political issue and they boil it down, and it's like, yeah, there's all this stuff happening in Syria and all these big things happening, but she's just a young girl who wants to watch movies and, you know, is trying to learn English and wants to make friends and wants to have a boyfriend and, or like a crush because she's still young. And like she just wants to live her life and be happy wherever that happens to be. And as an ESL teacher, the ESL teacher was really well done. Anyway, I talk about it in my wrap-up. I don't need to repeat it. When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain, Singing Hills Cycle number 2 by Niveau. I gave this one 4.5 stars as well. I like this one more than the Singing Hills Cycle number 1. These are both standalone, so you can read them in either order or any order. And I like this one more. It has the same setting. It's set in like a fantasy world of Imperial China. We still have Qi is a non-binary cleric. I still want to know more about this religion. I'm very interested in it. I want more information, but we haven't gotten a lot about that yet. And Qi is traveling. They are looking for information that they're recording throughout this empire of An, that they call it. And they come across these tigers that can transform into women in this world. And they are both telling two versions of the same story about a woman, a human woman who falls in love or has a love story with a tiger woman, and how that works. And it's very interesting, very compelling. I really enjoyed it, and I found it much easier to get into and much more understandable than the first one. In some ways, I feel like if you want to read both of them, at least from my perspective, I would actually recommend to read the tiger one first and then to read the rabbit one, because the Empress of Salt and Fortune, not the rabbit, the Empress of Salt and Fortune is the first one. I would recommend to read that second, because I personally, when I was first reading it, was confused about the world and what was kind of happening in it. So, and who Chi was and why Chi was there, and all of that stuff. So take it for what it's worth if you would like to do that. Alright, and now I have my 3 5-star books. The first one I have is The Impossible Girl by Lydia Kong. I talk about this in my week 1 check-in for the Asian Readathon that I have linked below. And it was really well done. It's set in 1850s New York. We have a woman who has an unusual heart. She was born with 2 hearts. And she is getting bodies of people who have medical conditions to sell them, because the body donation didn't exist really at this time. And there's a lot of ethical issues that the author discusses, who is also a doctor. And there's just a lot of interesting, it's a very fast-paced plot, very, very, very fast-paced, and yeah, it's really, really good. I recommend it. It's the second book from Lydia Kong that I've read, and I've enjoyed both of them very much, so I liked it. Number 2, I have The Point of It All. Number 2, Sugar Valley, like the Sugar Valley series number 2, but they're standalones. And it's by Christina C. Jones. I love Christina C. Jones, so this is the second book I've read by her. Oh my gosh, this book broke me, but it was really well done. She is an amazing writer. I have never read any romances that were this well written before. And the two that I have, because I've only read 2 books by her, but she deals with really serious issues in a way that I didn't think it was possible to do in a romance. Like, I was just, it's amazing. Like, she does a really great job. Her bedroom scenes, the doors are open, so just to let you know, if that's something that you're uh, worried about. And this book in particular, I had a little bit harder time. I liked the hero more in this one. The heroine I had a little bit harder time connecting with. It took me a little bit longer. I don't know if it's because she's like super rich, but I think it was more because she's. I don't want to give. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but she's making some decisions that I had a hard time relating to, which I think is the point. Like, I get that, but it's still sometimes it's harder to relate to her. I felt like, but the whole time I was reading the book, I just had this, like, that tightness in your chest, but like in kind of a good way. And I was just so, I wanted to know what was going to happen. And I'm like, I'm so glad this is a genre book because I know it can't end too badly. Like, so, but it was really well done. I really liked it. And I look forward to reading more from her. She's an excellent writer. She, the 2 books, I believe all of her books, she does Black Love, which is wonderful. And I think it's a great example of, if her books aren't flying off the shelves, like, the only thing I can figure is because, I mean, I know she is popular. I'm not trying to, like, deny that, but I'm just saying, like, she should be, like, above Nicholas Sparks. Like, I don't like Nicholas Sparks, but you know what I mean? Like, her writing is so good. Her romances are good too. So it's like, like, why aren't publishers, like, fighting over her? And the only thing I can figure is because she writes about Black love. And I love that she does, she has Black love, and then her, the 2 that I've read, both of her heroines are very successful. They're a little bit older. They have a life history, which is always nice to see because that's not as common in romance either. And they are but they're believable. Like that, I said that I think in my romance tropes that I didn't like, because it's oftentimes not well done. It's like you have this person who's supposed to be this high-powered attorney, but they're acting like they're 12. Like, and she doesn't do that. Her heroines are very professional, but they're also flawed. They're not perfect. They, have they they're not always doing everything the right way. Or the heroes aren't either. Like, and then they have their female friendships, which I always enjoy in romances. And Sugar Valley is like this wonderful little place that I'm like, can we go live there? Which I just think is also just a testament to what a great writer is, because she takes this, like, perfect little town that in a lot of other books you would be like, that's not realistic. People aren't that perfect. And because her characters are so well drawn, the setting feels real. Everything feels real. Like, I got to the end of it and I'm like, oh, what is Eva doing? Like, or not the end, but I was reading, like, what is she doing? No, Eva. And I had to keep reminding myself, like, these are not real people. I need to chill out a little bit. But yeah, if you have not checked out Christina C. Jones, I mean, I have only read 2 books by her so far, but I mean, it's another caliber of romance. It's so, so good. So, so good. All right, to stop gushing. All right, the last 5-star read I have is The Murder on the Lynx, and that's Poro. I think the last time I said Poro, which is like a Korean children's show. Poro. Number 2 by Agatha Christie. I liked this one more than the Mysterious Affair at Styles, which I read last month. I liked Hastings better. He was less annoying and more relatable. And I'm not going to give any spoilers, but at the end, I don't know, it was just very funny to me, some of the stuff that he does. This book in particular, I have read a few Agatha Christie. I think I've read maybe 6 or 7 Agatha Christie. Um, maybe more than that. Of the ones that I remember, like if I can remember the whole plot, like obviously I've read more a long time ago. I've read maybe 6 or 7, and this one especially just took lots of twists and turns, lots of twists and turns. I knew there was going to be more twists and turns, but mostly just because I could see how much of the book was left. I was like, well, there has to be more that's going to happen. They can't have it figured out now. So I really liked it. It's set in France, which is different. The only thing that I found a little bit odd, and I think this is like as a language person, especially since if you live somewhere um, in a different, like in a country that speaks a different language than your home country. So Poro, his first language is French, and he's speaking to people who are speaking French. And then Hastings would be the only one who's like only speaking English, but then they all seem to be speaking English because there's no mention that like, oh, they're speaking French, and I don't think Hastings knows French, or at least not that I know of. So I found that a little strange that there was no mention of like, oh, we're switching back to French and English, but it's probably because it was written by a British woman in 19. When was it written? Like maybe 1920 or something. I don't have it written down, but it's one of her early ones, and it is interesting because it's like set right after World War I, which is just a very interesting time, and when they mention things, and I don't know. I enjoy reading genre from like the early 1900s and late 1800s because I don't know, you just get a lot of the different culture in a different way than you do in literary fiction. I believe. So that was the number 2, and I enjoyed it. It was it's sort of, I mean, it's not realistic at all because, yeah, it's not. But it's really fun. The plot was really fun. There's a pretty large cast of characters, but not too ungainly. Like some of Agatha Christie's books there's too many people, and if they keep referring to them by their last names, I start to get confused. But in this book, I feel like the cast was pretty doable. There was a lot of interesting intrigue about the past. Um, yeah, it's just a really solid Agatha Christie book, I think. And yeah, I liked it a lot. I felt kind of dumb because I didn't know what the Lynx meant till I was like halfway through the book. I was like, what? The Lynx? What are the Lynx? Like, oh, golf. Like, I don't play sports, so I don't know. Also, I wanted to mention that this book and a lot of Agatha Christie books right now, I found this on Kindle Unlimited, and it also has the audiobook. So if you have Kindle Unlimited and you've been waiting to check out any of the Agatha Christie books, definitely look and see if it might be available with the audio version. Obviously, sometimes, that doesn't always stay. And I don't know if it's just for some of her older books or how many of them are that way, but it's definitely worthwhile to check out. I was very excited to see it. All right, so that wraps up my reading month of May. It was a little slumpy, but overall successful. I will link the videos down below that I have mentioned my other books in if you would like to check those out. And please like and subscribe. Like I said, it really, really makes a difference, and I really appreciate it. So thank you for watching. Bye-bye.